Hey, what's up, everybody? I am so excited that this American Indian movement has found its way to TikTok. Out of the hundreds of people I know that are talking about this in a lot of these circles, I seem to be the only one. I tend to be the only one who has officially registered with the so-called 5 civilized tribes. So if anybody else has done this successfully, hit me up. Let's talk and let's collaborate. But other than that, I'm enjoying the conversations. I think everyone is really amazing for digging up a lot of this history that was not as well known, and now everybody's talking about it. Black American celebrities, everyone. So as people continue to dig into their family history, I'm getting a lot of questions. So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you to everyone that DMs me wanting to know more knowledge. I'm here to help. So thank you to everyone that's been hitting me up. They've been in my inbox. I appreciate you all because everyone has heard all the information at this point. They've digested all the videos and sound bites and conversations, and everyone's asking, okay, so now what? What do we do next? And so if you think you've ever heard that you had an ancestor on the Dawes rolls, now would be a great time to get some verified evidence for yourself. Even if you've heard that you may have some Indian in your family, especially the Cherokee, this is not a coincidence. Our ancestors and elders did not have TikTok for this kind of stuff to go viral. We've all heard the same things. And so indigenous people, Cherokee Nation, let's start there and then we'll work our way back. Cherokee Nation being the principal First Nation people, I think it's time that we lead by example. So I'm gonna give you some quick and easy steps that you can do just to get the journey started, and hopefully this will bring you and your family together, and it'll be a learning, research, and discovery opportunity for you all. So like I said, for that deep research, you want to go to okhistory.org/research/Dawes, DAWES, for the Dawes roll, which was a commission. So they basically used to have these Indian agents that would come out, and they would do the roll taking for the U.S. government. So a lot of times when you see a lot of the foreigners that were clearly colonizers, they were dressed in Indian garb. That was a part of them assimilating to indigenous culture because they were leaving their old culture behind. So a lot of them did not have the hereditary lineage to be a part of these tribes, but they were military commanders in conjunction and working, because yes, some tribes did work with the United States government. So hopefully that'll help clear up a lot of misconceptions, because people tend to hit mental roadblocks along the way because it's just not adding up. So again, going back to that Dawes rolls, another tricky point is that you have to know your ancestor's name around the time of 1898 to 1914. This is the time of registration. A lot of people were being taken off the rolls, put on. A lot of fraud was being cited at the time. So a lot of the fraud that you all are claiming today was also the same fraud that was being called out back then. Now, I'm going to try to keep this video mainly about tribal enrollment. So now that you've found an ancestor on the Dawes roll, you have their number, and they're a part of a certain nation, where there's Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole, Cherokee, Muskogee Creek. You now can trace through this ancestor. So right now, the freedmen, a lot of discrimination is going on with them. But again, like I said, Cherokee Nation, let us be the leading, shining example of how to do this. Because let's think about this. Let's think about the spiritual and the cultural heritage of the American Indians and Native Americans. Where does racism come in? Where they can accept colonizers as their military commanders, but they can't have you because of skin color. Where do these concepts come from? Again, hopefully this will help clear up as you're also explaining this distortion in history and the facts to a lot of your elders. So because a lot of this information is just now coming out, it's all recorded with the what used to be called the War Department. Now I believe it's translated and converted over to the Department of Defense. For those that want to do very, very deep research on their ancestral records within the Bureau of American Indian Affairs, your information is probably in a subterranean office out of Lenexa, Kansas. If you have some Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, Lenexa is 20 miles outside of Kansas City, go Chiefs. And a lot of the other records, or they were half split off. You might have to go to Dallas-Fort Worth for the National Archives and check those records as well. So a lot of you all are not going to find your ancestral birth records, death certificates with the state, because it may end up being in the American Indian Archives and records. So tracing your heritage, your lineage, your genealogy is exactly that. You're going to have to prove that these were your ancestors. So that means going back. You're going to have to start with yourself, your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents. You're going to have to go back into maybe even you'll find yourself in the early to mid 1800s. And it's also helpful to recognize and remember that a lot of this territory was not yet a part of the United States. A lot of our ancestry goes back into a lot of the areas that were being colonized, such as Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, very prominent throughout the South along the eastern seaboard. So I'll continue to share the stories about the migrations, what happened, how some left by choice and how some were forced, but be very, very careful, because there are a lot of tribal units that were coming in from the Asiatic Arctic Ocean, coming down throughout Canada, and that were being forced as well. And so that's where a lot of our stories start to conflate. But you'll come to soon realize that a lot of those are your Asians, and just really watch the spirit and the energy, because a lot of them harbor a lot of racial discrimination and hate and envy. So that should let you know that something ain't right. That's not an indigenous practice. A lot of that comes in from colonization, a lot of the colorism and racism, and just a lot of, like I said, disdain for melanin. A lot of people also like to ask about the language of the Cherokee, Chalakikituwa. And so when we get into that, if they can't converse with you back in Cherokee, it doesn't make sense to engage in conversations. And then ask a lot of these people, why aren't you speaking your proper tongue? And if you are, how did you keep it intact, and how were you able to retain it? Because a lot of the American Indians were forcibly assimilated to public education and what they call residential boarding schools. So a lot of the compromise with that was to drop the native tongue. So if these people didn't have any interaction with the United States, then who are they? Those are your Spanish that were left behind, and we can get more into the history of the American-Mexican War later. So remember, a lot of times these people are only 2% of the population, and so it doesn't make sense to get wrapped up with them. A lot of people who are not able to trace their lineage, they will misguide and mislead a lot of you all in telling you that you shouldn't register with the 5 civilized tribes, and that is ridiculous, especially where we are at this critical and important juncture in our history. So absolutely register with the 5 civilized tribes if you can, if you're so blessed and lucky. It doesn't make sense to do all this research and again not apply the knowledge. You don't want to be one of those people that's on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and Clubhouse and Fanbase and Twitter Spaces talking about this all day, and then you don't apply the knowledge. It's time to cash in and check out. Once you are officially registered and enrolled as a tribal member, for example, a Cherokee Nation, you will then be able to access more records that can tell you about the daily, everyday lifestyle of your ancestors. And so right now, I say it's very important in terms of Cherokee reparations, because, and also Muskogee Creek, because we have to figure out what happened with that land. Heirs property is the name of the game right now. What is heirs property? Heirs property is a home or land that has been passed down from generation to generation, and get this, without a will, without any probate on what is to happen with the land. So for estate planning, this is very important, but in the event that you absolutely don't know what happened, resources are becoming available to help us all figure out what happened to our ancestral homeland. So with heirs property, this is land that all of the descendants jointly own together. And that's why it's so important right now for you to get registered with the tribes, because you get to claim this property. There are so many other benefits and resources at hand. This is all about inheritance. So hopefully this is enough. Make sure you check me out on my YouTube and you check me out on Facebook when I go live. I'm going to continue to have discussions about this until more information becomes available. But I'll give you what I have. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. Until next time. Bye.